I'm Mark with MD Custom Fly Rods here. Just gonna get a few little musings off while I work on this rod. Just kind of had a few inquiries about, just kind of in general about custom rods and kind of where they are, and because I'd fired off another message, a short video about that apparently is what this rod industry is now kind of turning into, is quote a boutique industry, and in many ways I guess I can agree with that. The what we're doing here is you know, it's no other than, or nothing different than, a lot of other industries that I guess have kind of creeped into our everyday lives. We have you know, I guess look at the beer industry. If you just go there, I mean, it's, you look at I mean, when I was growing up, there was Budweiser, Old Milwaukee, Old Style, and then kind of seemed like while I was in the service, a lot of the beer markets started to go not so microbrew yet, but I mean, you get Sam Adams and Killian's and Blue Moon, and which I guess started out as their own little manufacturing setup before they're taken over by, you know, larger industry. But and then from there, I mean, it's, you end up going to the, you know, Laughing Lab and Bristol Brewing and all these other different companies that are now wonderful, great companies. If you are a beer drinker, go get, you know, Carbaugh Brewing, or what I had the other day was Outlaw, which I thought was really, really good. And but it's a craft beer gone kind of more on the national chain, which is, you know, see a lot of even going on the same thing within this industry, you know, until you end up finally getting your way on down to back to, you know, my local market of brewing, which would be you know, around here, I love Cabin Boys Brewing. Very incredible heirloom ales, great. It's stuff you will just not get any place else. It just really kind of zones in on your taste buds. Not too unlike most anything else we do. We find stuff that we really like, and when we start to really enjoy it, we maybe take it a little step further, and which is exactly kind of what, you know, why I'm fine with, you know, this being called a boutique setup, because, you know, if you go on out and you start with your Zebco 202, and it, you know what, that rod will do you very well. I mean, for all of us, I mean, how many of that have really started? That was our first fishing rod. I mean, certainly was for me. I remember my dad brought home that old Zebco 202, and the first time we went fishing, it was, you know, it was kind of magical. But as we get a little bit older, you know, and if we continue with the fishing sport, you know, a lot of us will, you know, progress. I did, you know, I went full on bass fishing, did a few tournaments early on in the days when I was still in the service, so I was kind of limited to what I was able to do. But, you know, progressed, you know, went with a ugly stick that I fished with for years. It was a great rod. Then I had this Abu Garcia rod, which I really loved, and reel set that was just great bait caster. Now at the time, you know, in the early 90s, I spent pretty penny on it. Same thing with this nice St. Croix rod I mainly fished. This bait casting. It was like a 7.5 foot, I believe. Great rod. Difference was just night and day to that ugly stick. And back then, I remember seeing some guys that did have some custom rods, and I was just like, man, the money that must take. And there is a money factor to it. It's, you're paying for the craftsman's time, and not just the time to do this, but the time for, to sit down and decide what you want and all that. So it's kind of, what I say is if you get to this spot in your fishing life where it's, a off-the-shelf Bass Pro made or Bass Pro marketed rod is right where you're at, and that's where you're comfortable with, you're right where you need to be. I would not say go anywhere past that. Where I say you start to go a little bit more past that is when you, once again, like myself, you start really kind of specializing in a few different things. You want something that you just need a little bit more feel. You want, a different weight, and then, as I said, you start looking around, and it's like, okay, since I mainly make fly rods, Bass Pro puts out there, or their Cabela's puts out their kits that's starting at $100, $120, $125, reel, line, everything. Not a bad starter setup. I myself didn't start with that. I ended up starting with an old used setup that is a story in itself, but which I still have that setup, and I don't fish it, but it is not a high quality. And then ended up buying a TFO rod setup, and for the most part I was happy with that, and I fished that for many years. A lot of trout fishing with that, quite a few trout caught on it, and it still gets used on occasion when I need a spare rod and I'm taking new people out, and I will usually use that because I've just kind of found out some of the cheaper rods can, like anything else, can create bad habits trying to get them to work right. And so as you get going on, it's, if it works for you, it works for you, and that's where you're happy at. The difference is, I think, is when you get a little bit more into the sport. At the point, I was fishing a 5-weight, which is what most people start at. Just go with your standard 5-weight. It'll do trout. You can use it for panfish. You can throw some light streamers. You can nymph with it. Will it do everything? No. At a certain point, you might want a little bit more flexibility with that rod, which is what's going on with this one, or was supposedly going on with this one. I did have a customer on this one, but they have decided to go a different route. So I'm ordering a new blank for them, and this will be be going up for sale here. So if anybody's interested, it's a nice 3-weight blank, 9-foot, gold wrapping, snake eyes, and nice milled out reel seat. And it'll be going up for, I think it's what I told, and I'll sell it for what I had told them, which is $275, because they didn't want to go crazy on any sort of special detailing, other than they wanted the green blank and the gold wrapping. So that's minimal cost, if anything else. But the owner who was going to have this one, has just gotten really, jumped 2 feet on in, and they're wanting a Euro rod, so no complaints there, which we're going to be building them a custom Euro rod. But the sensitivity, because the initial measurements on this rod were set up when I did the initial setting of these guides, I was adding an extra guide in, to add a little bit more strength over it because they're a little bit shorter. Since I was adding an extra stripper guide at the base, just because they're shorter arms. It was for a woman, and she just has shorter arms. Therefore, with this, it's kind of going back to a standard setup, and which is what you kind of get is when you go this route. You can get something like this all set up, ready to go, in a week's lead time, pretty much, maybe 2 if there's a back order on the blanks. But you just kind of getting into that sensitivity. And the sensitivity on this rod as compared to them going on down to, or anybody going on down to Bass Pro, as soon as you start stepping away from the 5 weight, or the 6 weight, or maybe some of the 8 weights that they come in their kits, you step on into a 3 weight, now all of a sudden, just the rod alone, you are going to be paying right in that, for their cheapest blank, Chinese made, you're looking $250, $300 as is. Have a nice day. The TFO rod that I threw was kind of in that same market. I thought it was a little bit better until I actually had a guide and one of my son's friends come over and pick it up when we were out fishing. He's just like, kind of looked at me, kind of sighed a little bit, made a few casts with it, and he's just like, when I was casting it, I was hoping I was wrong, but I really hate to tell you this, your rod sucks. And then, because I kind of at the same time, I'm like, that's perfect rod for me, not a problem. It was great, it was doing what I needed it to do, until I unfortunately went and picked up his Winston rod and threw it, and I'm just like, oh, this is really nice. So, at that point, I went and spent a little bit more money and bought a nice, I didn't buy a Winston, which I can't highly recommend Winston's enough, and I love them as a company. They're good, they're great, they have great engineers that design their blanks, American made. As I said, can't recommend them enough. I just went out and kind of priced some of the stuff, and for me to really kind of upgrade, and when I did, I ended up buying an Epic rod, which I fish to this day and I love, and I've actually got 2 Epic rods. Yeah, it took a big penny. So that being said, is by going this, which is one of the reasons why I ended up kind of going this route, is I discovered that most of these top brands, these top designers, and these big macro brands in the bait casting world, in the fly fishing world, all the good ones sell their blanks, which is why I've got multiple Epic rods. I was able to buy my last Epic rod at not such a high-end price that it broke the bank. So, that being said, the boutique market of rods is not all that different than the high-end rod companies of Winston and everything else, because you can still get your Winston rod. It will throw exactly the same. It will feel exactly the same. It just won't look exactly the same. As I've said, one of the worst things that I don't think I'd ever seen was while I was in the Army is one of the guys had saved up and knew just out of boot camp a guy sitting their first duty station going out and getting tattoos, and one of the other guys, my buddy had been there we're stationed over in Korea at the time, and we'd been stationed there for 7-8 months, and a new boot had come on in and kind of looking, and all of a sudden he looks at my buddy and looks at the tattoo on his arms, and he does the same thing, pulls his arm out and says, "Man, I got the exact same tattoo." Watching my friend's Ed face just die killed him. He thought he was getting something original. No, he was just getting what the tattoo shop down from the base was selling and telling everybody else. So, that being said, you go in with a boutique rod, or, you will never have that exchange of flying that Winston rod or a TNT rod or an Epic or some of these other high-end brands that you like, or a Loomis rod, building a Gary Loomis off a Gary Loomis blank. You will never run into somebody saying, I've got that exact same rod. And may even spark up a few conversations of they ended up spending a little bit more money on the standard off-the-shelf rod. Whereas, as I said, we can go in and set your guides, set your lines, set your strength, go from single foot, double foot. We can adjust things, the load just a little bit differently to the way you want to fish it. So, that is just a quick note as I was working getting this thing done today. You guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.